everyone, and my name is John Ripma, and this program explores the heart and emotion that are often hiding behind the building of software, complex business software. This is a weekly series that will delve into uh, that aspect of building software, and that is where the person and the technology come together, and sometimes the person gets pretty frustrated with what's going on. Hopefully you'll be able to see how our guest today, Chris Shuba, was able to deal with those kinds of things and come out on the other side with a successful product. Um, by the way, Chris is the CEO and founder of Helios Quantitative. He provides a software and a service to investment professionals who are trying to compete on a level playing field with the big boys of the world, the JP Morgans, the Wells Fargo, folks like Schwab's, folks like that. So Chris is going to share with us his experience from the very beginning when he thought of developing this product all the way through launch and supporting the product and the various ups and downs in between. So without any further comment, I'd like to welcome Chris Shuba.
This will be fun.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see you. It's been a while since we've talked, so it is good to actually see you, and you're looking well. So
Thank you. Likewise.
let me get you started with a very high level question.
Mm-hmm.
So let's let's think about what sparked the idea for you to create tools, the tool application for your clients, these independent advisors, in the first place. What actually clicked in your mind that you decided this is something I really need to build?
Mm-hmm. So for our business, we consider ourselves at this stage to be a technology-enabled service. So it's really about this meshing of a digital experience that makes our relationship easy and scalable, but it's ultimately a service that we're providing. A bad example is Uber, right? So Uber is a technology that makes payment and ordering a ride really easy, but at the end of the day, someone has to show up and pick you up and take you somewhere. So there's that combination of technology and service, and we kind of see ourselves in that vein. In our beginning, we were all service. We had no technology. We more or less brute forced all the relationships that we had using available technology such as Excel, and the underlying VBA that was associated with it. Utilizing databases that we would create, getting into Python code, everything that we could control on our own to make things scalable on our back end, but really everything related to working with the advisor or other clients of ours was emails involving spreadsheets and so on and so forth that were limited in its scale and really professionalism. So we knew at some point we would grow to the point where we needed to have a real professional software interface that created that combination of uh, increased capability that comes with that, the scale that we needed on our back end, and then of course there's a certain professionalism that comes with that digital interface. So we knew we'd get there. And there's really a combination in different amounts of those things, but primarily scale that drove us to building an application.
Yeah, it sounds like many small businesses, they started off with reliance on Excel spreadsheets and
Mm-hmm.
email, the basics that started that were available, readily available, not expensive, but you could really get off the ground with them. So
Mm-hmm.
you grew beyond that. Another question to go along with that spark of inspiration that you had on your website, you have something very interesting, a statement that's very interesting. You say, disrupt or be disrupted. There is no middle ground.
Yep.
Now, fascinating thought. Um, how does that concept fit into, your inspiration to build tools, and how do you think that plays out with your clients to disrupt or be disrupted? There is no middle ground. How does that fit?
Yeah, I mean, back when we started using that back in 2015, 2016, this idea of disruption, our role as a quantitative research company and the related investment models and portfolio designs that we come up with, back then were very disruptive, and to this day, they're still fairly disruptive. But it's more of a mentality beyond the product that drives the way that we think about advancing our industry and advancing our advisors' ability to differentiate themselves in kind of a sea of sameness.
Mm, mm. Yeah,
Most financial advisors have exactly the same products, exactly the same software, exactly the same technologies. What makes them different is really their personalities in a lot of different sense, and how seriously they take client service and these little things around the edges that really aren't necessarily product driven. Because when it comes to financial planning, there's really two or three softwares that everyone uses, right? When it comes to the array of financial products, pretty much everyone has access to all the same
yep,
stuff. So it really comes down to service levels and personality in many cases. And we've flipped that. We've disrupted that normal flow by now bringing much more comprehensive model and portfolio design features to the average financial advisor. And so we think of ourselves as not only giving our advisors more scale, more capability, more ability to differentiate and better serve their clients, but we also think of it to ourselves. We can't just get complacent with what we do. We have to always be advancing in things like how do we use AI responsibly,
right.
things of that nature, that big, slow moving companies that might try to provide similar services to an advisor that they just can't or won't do in the at the speed that we would. So, it's just a bunch of small business talk, that disruptive differentiation concept.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that sea of sameness.
Mhm.
And my guess is the listeners to this program, this podcast, small businesses and others who are uh, facing the sea of sameness as well. I mean,
Mhm.
direct competitor is a direct competitor, and
Right.
so how do you distinguish yourself from that? And I feel like I'm familiar with Helios Quantitative, and I know that, the products that you're putting in the hands of these the independent investment advisors that are out there is something that they highly value because it does in fact give them it makes them look like they're that they're part of the big boys, and it keeps them in. And I'm putting words into your mouth, but I'm
Sure.
familiar with
Mhm.
it. But it keeps them from feeling like they're a redheaded stepchild back there that they just can't keep up. But they're right in there; they can swing with the big guys.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting how much the industry has changed because, you know, the reluctance for the big companies to evolve, to differentiate themselves is incredibly low and remains incredibly low. So what's interesting about the advisory space now is the advisors that we support, in my humble opinion, far surpass the capabilities of the big companies now. And to the extent where I think the big companies are trying to catch up now, it's completely flipped. But really, it's about, differentiating yourself from other independent advisors, um, not so much, against the more captive wires, but it's a big competitive world out there, and we like where we're sitting in it. But to the earlier question about inspiration and why we built technology, you know, it, technology is the heartbeat of what makes all this go, because it's that bridge of capability, scale, um, you know, those major competitive points that all add up to differentiation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit off. I've got another question I want to ask, but you made me think of something here, and that is the particularly with I think independent advisors. I'm familiar with some of them, and I know that a lot of times they want to be creative. They want to
Mhm.
be uh, differentiate themselves from the big ponderous, the larger companies that are very limited and very under control. And their
Mhm.
clients, I'm thinking, the ones I've talked to, their clients, and I am a client of some, want that creativity, want that out of the box thinking,
Mhm.
that sort of opens up a whole world of intelligence that you don't necessarily, I didn't necessarily feel, speaking for myself, with the larger organizations that I felt like I was being processed, there was a template that got laid over me that I fit into and that's it.
Mhm.
And I didn't particularly like that. But so anyway, let me,
Yeah. I mean, I can expound on that, but I know we have a time limit.
yeah,
So you tell
yeah.
me where we want to go.
Why don't you expect, well, I would like for you to expound on it a minute. Yeah, I really would. Take a minute to do that if you can.
Well, the reason I say that is because, that's where tech comes into play. So one of the reasons we built out the application we did with Experion is about customization. And customization fits in two areas. The first is, does a model or a portfolio make decisions that are in line with the way that the advisor thinks about money management, in line with their philosophies, right? Some get very particular. Others don't care at all. They just want it to work, right? And that
Right,
enables
right.
us to serve that entire spectrum. But secondarily, what I've learned about portfolios is that most portfolios are fairly easy to create in the very beginning, but they're hard to manage over time. Either that's because they're only updated when an advisor happens to meet with a client, or the markets are moving quickly in different ways. How much do you make a trade? When do you go in? When do you go out? What is the magnitude or size or scale of it? Does that evolve? I think it's very, very complicated. And so in our way of using technology, we effectively automate all of that for the advisor so they can have their own unique philosophy, their own customization, and each client can be uniquely different in their design and behavior, but it's all
Yeah,
scalable. So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that, you're really talking about that today's conversation, which is, why does tech matter to us?